Okay, are we done with the interruption? Okay. So yeah, let's decide that we have the .NET team doing this invoice timesheet. And yeah, this is one of the reasons that we choose command handlers and event handlers to be the deciding factor as to who takes care of what slice. Associated with those are usually processors or views. So, for example, if you're doing approval of a timesheet, then you would have the associated screen, which we don't have yet. So maybe someone can copy this. I guess I'll do it. And definitely change the type of that. Okay. So what we would have, usually this would bubble up to make sure that it's the same team or even the same person, because we definitely have these pieces of work as one-offs for a person. And if I just give myself more room by moving some of these over. Okay. I guess the protocol for these meetups is going to be coordinate on Slack as to who you are and why you want to join first. Right. So generally what happens is we make a assignment to some particular person. And we can say that, you know, it'll be Adam working on this or whatever. So I can put my initials up here. If I could just grab, okay, let's try grabbing that. So this is how I would mark myself working on a particular slice. And obviously, depending on which swim lane I'm in, it might tell me which stack I'm using, but not necessarily. I could have the same, another event here that's an admin that could be using a different stack. So in this case, we're going to err on the case that, you know, we're going to modify things to have these things here. We'll still have enough interplay between the two different stacks because we do have this particular case here where we have events coming from the two different places, but the read model is done in, or the view is done in .NET. And so, you know, in the Nginx, you can see exactly what that would be in the config. I mean, you can think of a path for, you know, that this processor is going to use to look up this timesheet and this, this invoice timesheet view for what to do. One thing to these processors, it's really helpful to coordinate them with a to-do list, because as they look at these, they're going to mark off what was done or what wasn't. Let's break that up for a second. and really say the fact that it is a to-do invoices to generate if we're going to have that. I can group these back together. There we go. So the to-do lists are interesting. They're not to-dos for me to implement or to add. The word to-do list is important in an event model for marking off queues, stacks, or anything like that that coordinates the progress of a long-running workflow, right? Shoot, why am I selecting both again? So perhaps what we want to do is to say to-do list. And maybe there's a better verbiage that we can come up with for event modeling that'll not confuse to-do.
Perhaps roster.
Roster, it's too opinionated.
Okay.
I think, because rosters are domain specific, usually for schools or things like that. And
so Adam, you're saying this is coordinating a long running workflow, and so it's like basically.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things are long running workflows. I think we.
Right. So how so this is kind of the, is this the endpoint of a piece of workflow?
Not necessarily. That's really up to the data to show us and our naming to show us. So there's nothing that says that it has to stop here or that this specifically is the middle, except for the fact that it's connected to a processor that does something. That might be a final thing that happens, and then we generate another invoice here, right? Maybe this is the connection that we need to have, or perhaps this view is actually badly named, and sometimes we may get into the situation where we're using a to-do list and as a report at the same time. Greg calls, in the actual implementation, he calls these fulfillment documents. They're just a type of a view, and they are used explicitly in the implementation for facilitating a long-running workflow, or a saga, as Udi Dehan calls it, and things like that.
But right. Okay. So basically, the fact that this is connected to a processor means it needs to be some sort of. That's really what you're signaling here. There's this processor step.
Yeah. In this case, that's what it's used for. And generally, I would have, if there's a long-running workflow, this is a bad example because it's really short workflows. In this case, you're just adding timesheets or adding your reports of time that you've spent on certain things, and then you have, and you're pretty much done, right? So eventually those things get reported on, but there's nothing inherently tying you to a long-running workflow. You're just doing one-off reports. A long-running workflow would be booking a vacation, which I use as an example quite a bit, where you need your plane ticket, you need your hotel stay, you need your car rental, you need blah, 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 whatever. 5 or 6 different things that have to be coordinated. There is definitely, in that case, if one of those things isn't done, you might want to, if one of those things is not available, such as there's no hotel rooms, or why would you fly there in the first place? You can't sleep on a bench. So you want to show that that is not a complete fulfillment of that trip, if I was to use the word fulfillment. And therefore you would probably have, one of these green stickies talking about the status of the entire trip being booked. And you can see that there would be items in there that are not fulfilled, such as I haven't gotten the plane ticket yet. And that way you can elaborate longer running workflows. Does that make sense?
Right. So we don't have an example of a longer running workflow in this thing yet.
Yet. One might emerge.
One might emerge. Okay, good. Okay, that's so. But we do have what I'm hearing you say is we do have types of views, special types of views that need to be highlighted, right? And this type of view, I don't know, maybe queue is also a loaded word, but it's just basically it's not just a regular view. Like there's state views, and then there's things that are just queues for other stuff to deal with, right? Like
Yes,
this one is a
absolutely.
special type of view that is a queue of actions to be taken.
Yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
queuing up stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know if queue is the right word, but it's more
It,
general
it,
than
it is. I think I've had this question a lot of times. I'm not sure. I don't want to use Q. I know that it's more prevalent in the UK and in terms of using it for even lining up to the store. So there might be okay, but certainly in North America, in line of business applications, it's kind of like it starts to edge into the technical where, oh, there's a technical person in the room. They're going to start talking about, oh, this is a good place to put in some RabbitMQ
yeah.
or
I think
something.
that's
So
I
it
think maybe
starts
that's a
to
I think maybe that's a technical people problem. They have this loaded word for term, but most people
maybe,
just this is where this view is queuing things up for future action, and people get that. So
maybe.
unfortunately, it's
I'm still hesitant. I think to-do lists. I went to to-do lists simply because I wanted no chance of people misinterpreting it as a specific because queue is loaded. It means that it's gonna be done in the order that it came in. So it's a
right.
first in, first out implication, and that is getting a little bit too much into the
Yeah,
implementation and might already start to give an opinion of how the implementation is going to be, or not even implementation. It might even have business implications, saying that our clients are treated for this part of the system. If they got in first, they're going to get treated first.
yeah.
So that might actually work against us. I like roster. I just think it might be
I
tied to
think
other domains
I
because
think
then
raw.
you
I
can
think
have like you can have priorities in there, and you can say no matter every time that I run this, imaginarily every 5 seconds, if I have 5 new entries in there, I'm going to have them sorted in a specific way, and I'm going to take the most, the top priority ones first. Things like that. Does that make sense?
yeah. I'm getting your challenge is what's good for the technical domain is bad for the business in a lot of these cases, and vice versa. To-do
Yeah.
list is going to probably confuse a lot of the business people because they have other meanings for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
I don't
It's a
know.
tough one.
A tough one. The only thing maybe backlog. It's a backlog of stuff.
Yeah. Well, then you got all the agile people get chiming in.
Yeah, well, but it still has the same meaning. It's a backlog of stuff. Pick something
Yeah.
off the backlog and do it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
actually, if they chime in, it actually follows their metaphor. So good enough, right? But business,
Yeah.
that's a backlog of stuff to deal with, right?
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it's a
And if
view into the things that were submitted. I mean,
yeah, but
and
if
so
but is the question is once they've taken off, they're off the backlog, right?
yeah, they're marked. They're check marked.
They're
That
marked.
doesn't mean they're
Yeah,
deleted. So there's an implication of like, what does a backlog mean? A backlog means that once it's done, it doesn't exist in the backlog, or does it mean that its status flag or field is set to done?
right.
Does it matter? Right. I don't think it should, but
So
that's what we
anyways,
have.
but I think what I'm hearing you say is there's special types of views, these things, I'll call them backlog for now. There's these backlog things that are just kind of stuff that needs to be processed. And then there's views that might be state views and other thing. And people might need to understand that at a high level to follow this
Yeah.
diagram.
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons Greg uses the word fulfillment, to say that this must be complete or whatever. And it is a manifest of all the pieces. And not only that, he goes further into making sure that the fulfillment captures dependencies in kind of a staggered way, so that if the flight booking part of that fulfillment has sub steps for reservation or whatever, of that to actually reserving your seat, those may be um, sub items that you would explicitly show in that green sticky, and then have those things being filled out as an example. So hopefully that does that. So okay, well, enough about this. I think we have this example here. I'm going to erase myself from having this assigned. Um, I think Shishtuff has some .NET things, but one thing I want to do is go back to this diagram and just make sure that we have some way to route things right now. I'm not sure if we want to bother with that, but let's. Oh, sorry. One more thing. State tracking. So we have two states that we're tracking. One is what the state of the entire information system is, regardless of who's logged in or logged out or whatever, who's refreshed their browser. But the other one is when you're authenticated, you need some sort of a server-side tracking of this user being logged in or whatever, and that might be, you know, a way to analyze whether we have shared information between two things. So we do have a couple of other things that we want to share state with. And this may be different in different implementations, but what we'll have here is tokens. And there's an argument why you might want to have those as events that you read, just to make things simple. So this might live in here. If your event store just stores them as another eventing query, first of all, it's not a bad practice to get going and query the event store directly. In other words, if we have a simple not an hours report, but if we have a simple view or read model, we can simply have a query of the actual event store to get that state. That's actually okay to do to get going quickly. So same thing with tokens. If someone's logged in and I have some sort of a token for authentication, maybe that is stored as an event for the first little bit, and you can migrate that out later. It shouldn't really matter for the way the whole application functions from the user's perspective. They should still be able to get through the screens and log in and log out as expected. The other thing that we want to have in here is sometime I want to obviously have our views, which is going to be the other reports and things. We're going to have those views, reports, etc. All the green stickies. We do want to share those, and they may be stored in the same file system, right? I think for initial application here, we're not going to use event store. We're not going to use anything. We're going to use a very low level implementation of all of these things, and what that may mean is we don't even have Nginx. We simply have routes with ports directly. So this can be really a question mark whether we bother with this for the first one. So that's an option, right? We certainly have an event store. This is just the file system. So file system used for all this. Give myself a little more room here. Right, and these can just be good. I can't actually give myself more. So we may actually just embed, you know, this could be port. And this one can be port 2001, right? Okay. So that's interesting. So your read models and your coordination will have to grab some of these other things as well as we continue to automate this. So let's jump in to the middle, and I guess Krzysztof, you can help me out with some of the .NET stuff. I don't know if I ran Rider on this install yet. I probably don't have .NET installed yet, but we'll see. I had to repave my system and get a new one since I had my laptop stolen in France. So there's still a few things that are not running properly. I have it installed. Oh. Where is Rider? Oh, here it is. Yeah, I don't think I ran it before. Whatever, that's fine. Always resharper key maps. Great. Okay, so Krzysztof, maybe you can start and share your screen while I get my stuff done, and I'll guide you through what we want to do. So we're going to do approved timesheets, and we're going to do low tech solutions. So don't worry about having anything set up like event store or anything like that. We simply want to have a screen shown and a command being sent via one route with JSON with the pertinent information. Are you there, Krzysztof, or did you leave? It might be too late. No, he's still there.
I am.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if you're set up, but I'm going to stop sharing, and you can share your desktop if you'd like to the .NET piece. I think there's a lot of people that want to see something in .NET. Meanwhile, I'll take over once you're done, and maybe I'll set up the repo